Hi, I'm Geri Allyn, a partner at Daversa Partners. And today I want to talk with you all a little bit about frontier tech. To me, frontier tech is one of the most exciting yet mischaracterized categories. When I say frontier tech, most people jump to the Jetsons, autonomous vehicles, hovercrafts, hologram music festivals, IoT, robots. And I find the category often gets relegated to these sci fi or moonshot endeavors, when in reality, it is so much more than that. I don't mean this in a dismissive tone, and in fact, the aforementioned are all certainly frontier tech businesses. It's just that these companies, while exciting and important, don't fairly capture the true nature of how I see this category. Now, before I get into definitions, I want to start with an asterisk in that the categorization I'm about to provide is my own. It's not universal or textbook. It's not a baseline description. It's just mine. And like so many topics, there are multiple perspectives and vantage points on the matter. So I will acknowledge again that this is just my point of view. So to start at the beginning, by definition, a frontier is simply a limit. It is the limit or extent of understanding or achievement in any particular area. It is uncharted territory or the unknown. And to me, those bold enough to tackle and challenge frontiers, well, they're pioneers. They choose to focus their time on exploring the boundaries of the known and the possible. And while it's certainly daunting to me, I also find it to be a noble pursuit. As it relates to frontier tech, I see these as companies that challenge assumptions. They challenge the status quo. They challenge the boundaries of what we believe or deem to be possible. And in doing so, we grow and evolve as a species. We master new concepts, we extend our understanding and our knowledge, and the frontier thus evolves. That constant evolution is why I chose to focus on frontier tech nearly a decade ago when I joined Daversa. I love working in a fluid category, one that is ever changing, with unending areas of opportunity. And to me, frontier tech companies, they push the world forward in a positive and meaningful way. They make improvements to how we live, how we learn, how we interact. To me, this category creates opportunities to enact real positive change and to make the world a better place. And it's for that reason I believe it's so important to give this category a voice, to support these tech pioneers. Without pioneers, we would not have so many of the things we take for granted today. We wouldn't have light bulbs or running water, refrigeration or cars or airplanes. There would be no internet, let alone wireless internet. We would not have things like personal computers or email, or even simple things like pencils with erasers. And speaking to this group directly, I also think it's important to note the role that we as individuals have in shaping these frontiers. Time is our most valuable resource. And when you give of your time, whether it to be to listen, advise, invest, or work to support the extension of the frontier, you are setting the foundation for the future. And one of the things that I frequently need to remind myself of is that every great company, no matter how big today, started as some person or person's wild idea. And without a person or persons willing to give the idea an audience, and in many cases, write the first check or join as employee number 5, many of the companies we know today would not exist. In my decade plus working at Daversa, it's been interesting to see how many of the businesses I work with almost never were, and really came to be because amidst a sea of no's, or come back to me when you have a few more customers, somebody heard the story and was willing to go out on a limb and back an audacious idea. And to me, it's a great reminder that most things aren't obvious until they're obvious. And to emphasize this, I will give you a few examples, because I personally find things make more sense with some context or stories behind them. So as I mentioned, I've been with Daversa over a decade. And back in 2011, I was a 24-year-old search consultant spending most of my time in San Francisco, always running late because I could never get a taxi when I needed it. And one day, as I frustratingly stood on the corner of Howard and Spear in the rain, trying to hail a cab, I was late and a stranger in passing said, "Hey, you should get that Uber app. You're never going to get a ride this time of day." And I kind of scoffed at his negative attitude and didn't think much of it. But that night when I got home, I looked at the business. I downloaded the app, and the next morning I used it. And then again, being in search, I cold emailed the founder and CEO, Ryan Graves and Travis Kalanick, and told them I used their product and wanted to help. Of course, I heard nothing for a few weeks because who responds to a cold email from a headhunter? But then a reply came, and a few weeks later, they said they were expanding to the East Coast. Let's talk. At that time, the idea of on demand was non existent. The idea of shared economy wasn't existent. It was the era of Groupon where people were interested in paying less, not more for service. But what I saw there was the future, the idea of on demand and safety and accountability when I traveled alone. And while Uber today has grown and reinvented itself many a times, it was back then a frontier idea. And it was an uphill battle to change thinking. A few years later, in 2015, I met an entrepreneur named Ethan Brown at a warehouse in El Segundo, California. The building was nothing to look at from the outside, and my expectation of this 50-person business were very low. And out the front door bounded a 6'6" Ethan Brown, who welcomed me and suggested we do a walkabout to get acquainted. And whilst we walked, he began to tell me a story of a better future. Ethan had started a company called Beyond Meat, and his business had a simple mission: to make the world a better place. And for the next hour, I sat and listened to the scientific roadmap that had led to the creation of plant-based protein. And I was hooked, and I believed. I believed that Ethan wanted there to be optionality. He wanted there to be a new way of doing things. He wanted us as humanity to be more thoughtful and informed about our choices, to understand the global impact that 1 pound of meat, whether that be on animal welfare or natural resources, cancer, disease, sustainability, he wanted us to understand. And I think that's a frontier concept. Frontier concepts can also bring advancement in safety and awareness. In working with Ted Bailey at Data I've seen that we don't have to wait for something to happen to react, that in many cases we can anticipate incidents or issues and be prepared to manage or even prevent them. Using artificial intelligence to generate real-time alerts on a global basis, such that critical information can be shared fast and quick and in a useful manner. Data can now be a business that's able to direct first responders to those in need in seconds. So in the midst of a flood or earthquake, save lives. That idea, that's frontier, that's pioneering. And given the state of the world today, with all that has shifted as to how we operate, especially amidst the global pandemic, healthcare has been a revitalized frontier. Long cast aside for a longer timeline to outcomes, healthcare is now center stage. And for me, working with bold operators like Liz Meyerdirk, who is guiding the Pill Club to ensure education and access for women in a truly personalized way, or teams at Virta and Twin challenging the idea of chronic disease and chronic illness. It's incredible to see consumers embracing their own health and wellness and being advocates for themselves. It's wild to me to think that Watson and Crick and Rosalind Franklin discovered the genome over 50 years ago, and it's taken us until now to find a way to decode it and really synthesize its data on an individual basis. And thinking about medicine as a personalized science, that's frontier. Challenging the assumption that every person needs the same nutrition, that's frontier. Thinking about medicines as a mean of preventative care, not palliative care, that's frontier. Thinking about plant-based protein or on-demand services or artificial intelligence, these are all pioneering ideas. Now, hearing all of these stories and taking a step back, you would not likely look at Daversa Partners, the firm known for building software and internet businesses, as the likely partner for these types of companies, but they fit us perfectly. And that's because regardless of if it's food or mobility, software or hardware, these companies have mission and purpose, and they align with our ethos of challenging the possible. As partners to the founders and the entrepreneurs, we know how important it is to not only have a great idea, but to have the people there to execute it. There are so many new ideas and innovations that there's an unbalance in the supply-demand curve. And that's why you may often hear that in this market that there is a battle for great talent. And that's because there is. There's so many data signals, entrepreneurs, founders. It's hard to get the silence to really tell your story, especially if you're a challenger brand. And I think for us as headhunters, and myself in particularly, where I see value is finding the time and space for executives to stop and pause and consider the future Consider the optionality they might have at that moment. Most founders are not known. The businesses are not household names. So outside of offering long-winded definitions, what I would say is if you take anything from this, it would be, a soft call to action, which is as people who have access to ideas as they're being formed, just remember that you have the ability to help shape the narrative and support the foundation of the next frontiers to be explored. Thank you.